Welcome to Chronicle Stories TV, The Faceless Man at the Cabin. The forest was quiet, save for the gentle rustle of pine needles in the evening breeze. Ethan's car crunched softly on the gravel driveway as he pulled up beside the old cabin. He stepped out slowly, taking a deep breath of the cool, clean air. It smelled of earth and wood smoke, a scent that made him feel both curious and comforted. The cabin sat nestled in a small clearing, framed by tall evergreens that swayed gently overhead. Its weathered wooden walls and mossy stone chimney seemed as old as the forest itself. Ethan ran a hand along the rough grain of the porch railing, feeling the chill settle into his fingertips. "This is exactly what I needed," he said quietly, his voice soft and steady. The day's long drive had left him tired, and the quiet solitude was a balm to his restless mind. Inside, the cabin was dim but cozy. A small wood stove sat in the corner, cold now but promising warmth soon. The wooden floor creaked under his boots as he moved about, unpacking a small bag with simple clothes, a flashlight, and a well-worn book. The fading light outside painted the room in warm, golden hues. Ethan settled near the window, gazing out as the sun slipped behind the trees, the sky turning from pale blue to soft pinks and purples. Somewhere deep in the forest, the chirp of crickets began to rise. As twilight deepened, Ethan felt the first gentle touch of unease. The woods around the cabin, so peaceful moments ago, now seemed to hold a deeper silence, like the forest was holding its breath. A sudden movement caught his eye, just beyond the edge of the clearing, where the shadows pooled thickest. There, standing perfectly still among the trees, was a man. But there was something very wrong. The figure was tall and thin, wearing a dark coat that blended with the night. Ethan's heart quickened as he focused on the man's face, or rather, the absence of one. Where eyes, nose, and mouth should have been was smooth skin, featureless and pale, like a blank mask. Ethan blinked and rubbed his eyes. When he looked again, the figure had vanished. He swallowed hard. "Must be a trick of the light," he murmured, but the cold sweat on his skin told him otherwise. He locked the cabin door, drawing the curtains tight, his hands trembling ever so slightly. Outside, the forest seemed to grow darker, colder. The night was no longer just quiet, it felt watchful. Ethan sat back in his chair, the wooden legs creaking softly beneath him. He stared at the drawn curtains, heart still pounding faintly. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, carrying with it a faint rustling sound that set his nerves on edge. He reached for the small lantern on the table and lit it, casting a warm, steady glow across the room. The soft light pushed back the shadows that crept along the corners, making the cabin feel a little safer, at least for now. Trying to calm himself, Ethan pulled the book from his bag. It was an old novel, something light and familiar he hoped would ease his mind. But even as he opened it, his thoughts kept drifting back to the figure outside, the man with no face. He told himself it must have been a trick of the fading light, or maybe a trick of his tired mind. But that smooth, blank face haunted him, the empty skin like a void that refused to be forgotten. After a few pages, the silence of the cabin was broken by a soft thump from outside. Ethan froze. His eyes darted to the window, now obscured by the thick curtains. The sound came again, a slow, deliberate tapping, like something brushing against the wooden walls of the cabin. He swallowed hard and whispered, "Hello." Only the wind answered. His hand tightened around the book. "Maybe it's just an animal," he said to himself, trying to sound more confident than he felt. But then, a low scrape came from the porch outside. Slow, dragging, as if someone was moving cautiously along the wooden boards. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He stood up, the floor creaking beneath his weight, and moved to the door. He peered out through the peephole. The porch was empty. "Hello," he called softly, his voice barely above a whisper. No reply. Just the quiet night. He unlocked the door slowly, opening it just a crack. The cold night air rushed in, crisp and clean. The moon was rising, casting pale silver light through the branches. The porch was empty. Ethan stepped outside, heart pounding, the gravel crunching beneath his boots. He scanned the tree line carefully. No sign of the figure. The woods were still. Too still. A faint breeze stirred the pine needles at his feet, and for a moment, Ethan thought he heard the faintest whisper, almost like a sigh, carried through the trees. He shook his head, trying to push the creeping unease away. "Get some sleep," he told himself. "It's just your imagination." He closed the door, bolted it tight, and drew the curtains again. As he settled back in his chair, he stared out the window one last time. And there, just beyond the clearing, a shadow, standing still and silent, watching. But this time, the faceless man was closer. Ethan's eyes remained glued to the window, watching the dark silhouette just beyond the clearing. The faceless man hadn't moved. He stood motionless beneath the branches, as if waiting for something, or someone. Ethan's breath came out in slow, steady puffs, visible in the chilly night air. His mind raced, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Why are you here?" he whispered, almost involuntarily, though he knew no answer would come. He reached for his phone on the table, hoping to call someone, but the screen showed no signal. No surprise, out here in the deep woods, cell coverage was scarce at best. The faceless man shifted slightly, tilting his head, or where a head should have been. The smooth surface caught the moonlight in an unnatural way, glinting faintly like polished stone. The absence of features was somehow more unsettling than any face could be. Ethan felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, to run back into the cabin and lock every door and window. But something rooted him to the spot. A mixture of fear and curiosity. "Do you want something from me?" he asked softly. The figure remained silent, unmoving except for that slow tilt of the head. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the woods. A branch snapped underfoot. Ethan spun around, heart pounding wildly. Nothing. Just the trees swaying gently. He took a step back from the window, feeling the floorboards creak beneath his weight. The lantern's light flickered, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. Trying to steady his nerves, Ethan walked to the small kitchen area and poured himself a glass of water. His hands shook slightly as he brought it to his lips. The quiet was thick, almost suffocating. Outside, the night seemed to press in closer. Then, a faint knock on the door. Ethan froze, glass halfway to his mouth. Another knock, slow and deliberate. His voice barely a whisper, he called out, "Who's there?" No answer. He forced himself forward, hand trembling as he reached for the door handle. Before he could touch it, the knock came again, this time from the window beside the door. Ethan's heart leapt into his throat. He turned slowly and looked through the glass. The faceless man stood inches from the pane, unmoving, watching. No face to meet his gaze, only smooth, blank skin. Ethan stepped back, breath shallow. "Please," he whispered, voice barely audible. "Please go away." The figure didn't move. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying a soft sigh through the trees. Ethan closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and when he opened them again, the figure was gone. Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he locked the door again, double-checking each bolt and latch. The silence that followed felt heavy, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. He glanced toward the window where the faceless man had appeared just moments before, but the clearing was empty now, bathed only in soft moonlight. He poured himself another glass of water, trying to steady his nerves. "Just the wind," he whispered, hoping the words would make themselves true. The cabin was small but cozy. The wood-paneled walls and the faint scent of pine soothed him slightly. He moved to the wood stove, striking a match and coaxing a small flame to life. The warm glow slowly spread, chasing away some of the cold that had settled into the room. Sitting back down in his chair, Ethan wrapped his hands around the mug he had filled with warm tea earlier. The steam rose gently, curling in the quiet air. He tried to focus on the rhythm of his breath, slow, even, grounding himself. Outside, the forest seemed alive with sounds now, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft crackle of dry leaves, and the occasional snap of a twig. But beneath those familiar noises was an unfamiliar feeling, an undercurrent of watchfulness. He thought about the faceless man. What could he want? Why had he come here, so close, so silent? Ethan closed his eyes briefly and remembered the stories his grandmother used to tell, tales of spirits that wandered the woods, searching for something lost. But those were just stories, weren't they? Myths meant to scare children. He shook his head, forcing the thoughts away. Just as he was starting to feel his eyelids grow heavy, a sudden noise from outside made him jump, a sharp scraping sound, like nails dragged across bark. Ethan grabbed his flashlight and crept to the door, his breath shallow in the cold air. He opened the door a crack and swept the beam into the darkness. The light caught a glimpse of something. A shadow moving quickly between the trees, vanishing before he could focus. Heart pounding, Ethan stepped out onto the porch. The cold night air bit at his skin, and he pulled his jacket tighter. "Who's there?" he called softly. Only silence answered him. He took a slow, steadying breath and looked back at the cabin. The warm glow inside promised safety, but the woods beyond held their secrets close. Closing the door behind him, Ethan locked it firmly. The night had only just begun. Ethan settled back into his chair, the comforting warmth of the wood stove radiating through the cabin. The shadows on the walls flickered gently with the flames, and for a moment, the unease that had clutched at his chest loosened. He closed his eyes and tried to listen, not to the silence, but to the rhythm of the forest itself. The soft sigh of the wind through the branches. The distant call of a night bird. The steady crackle of burning wood. Yet beneath those natural sounds, a faint whisper seemed to linger, almost inaudible, like a breath carried on the wind. Ethan's eyes snapped open. He strained to listen. The whispering felt too close now, almost as if it was coming from just beyond the cabin walls. He rose slowly and moved toward the window. Peering out, he saw the moonlight painting the forest silver. The trees stood tall and still, but the clearing was empty. "Hello." Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper, careful not to break the delicate quiet. No answer came, only the soft rustling of leaves. His heartbeat settled into a slow, steady rhythm again, but the sense of being watched clung to him like a shadow. He turned from the window and moved to the small kitchen table. From his bag, he took a notebook and pen, deciding to write down everything he had seen and heard, a way to make sense of the night. As he wrote, the words seemed to flow easily, each sentence a tether grounding him to reality. Suddenly, a soft knock came at the door. Ethan froze, pen poised over the paper. Another knock, this time from the window beside the door. His breath hitched. Slowly, he walked toward the door and peered through the peephole. There was no one there. Heart pounding, Ethan opened the door just enough to peer outside. The porch was empty. Yet as he looked out into the dark woods, a faint shape moved between the trees. The faceless man, standing just at the edge of the clearing, watching him again. Ethan closed the door and locked it, feeling the cold fingers of fear brush across his skin. The night stretched long and silent once more, but Ethan knew, deep inside, this was far from over. The night wore on, and Ethan's eyelids grew heavier with each passing hour. The quiet crackle of the fire and the steady ticking of an old clock on the wall were the only sounds inside the cabin. Yet sleep remained elusive. His mind circled endlessly around the faceless man. An impossible presence that seemed to blur the line between reality and nightmare. He decided to explore the cabin more thoroughly, hoping to distract himself. The small cabin was filled with relics of a past long gone. Shelves lined with dusty books, a faded photograph hanging crooked on the wall, and a locked wooden chest tucked in a shadowed corner. Curiosity tugged at him. With a soft click, he opened the chest and found old letters and journals, brittle with age. One journal lay open, the handwriting elegant but hurried. Ethan read silently, "The man without a face haunts these woods. He comes for those who wander too close to his domain. The cabin is the last refuge, but not forever." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. The words felt like a warning. Suddenly, the wind outside howled through the trees, rattling the windows. The cabin shuddered, as if responding to the storm outside. Ethan closed the journal and moved to the window. Moonlight spilled through the glass, revealing the familiar silhouette of the faceless man just beyond the clearing. He was closer now, almost at the edge of the trees. Ethan swallowed his fear and whispered, "Why are you here?" No answer, only the silent stare of smooth, featureless skin. The fire flickered and the shadows danced, blurring the lines between reality and something else entirely. Ethan felt the cabin's walls close in, the weight of the forest pressing down. He knew this night was far from ordinary, and the faceless man was only the beginning. Ethan sat back down, the worn journal still resting in his lap, its words echoing in his mind like a distant warning. The storm outside was growing stronger. Rain began to patter softly against the cabin's roof, mingling with the whisper of the wind through the trees. For a moment, the forest seemed alive with murmurs and distant echoes. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a faint buzzing. The old landline phone on the wall ringing. Startled, Ethan stared at the handset. He hadn't even noticed the phone before. In this remote place, he assumed it wouldn't work. But there it was, ringing insistently. He hesitated, then lifted the receiver slowly. "Hello." His voice was cautious. No reply. Just heavy breathing. Ethan's heart skipped. "Who is this?" A soft whisper came through the line, almost too faint to hear, "Don't look outside." The line went dead. Ethan's hand trembled as he set the phone down. His eyes darted toward the window. Outside, the rain was falling steadily now, obscuring the woods. He felt both drawn to and afraid of what waited beyond the glass. He sat back down, trying to steady his breath. "Don't look outside," the voice had said. But the faceless man was still out there somewhere. Watching. The night was thick with secrets, and Ethan knew he had only just begun to uncover them. Ethan's mind raced after the strange phone call. The soft patter of rain against the window seemed to grow louder, filling the cabin with a rhythmic calm. He glanced over at the old wooden chest he'd found earlier, still locked and mysterious in the shadowed corner. Something about it tugged at him, like a key piece to the puzzle he couldn't ignore. With slow, deliberate movements, he approached the chest. His fingers traced the worn edges of the wood and the rusty metal latch. It didn't budge at first. After a moment, he noticed a small keyhole hidden beneath a faded strip of leather. Pulling gently, he revealed a tiny brass key taped to the underside of the lid. Ethan's breath caught. "Well, this might help," he murmured softly. He slipped the key into the lock and turned it with a quiet click. The chest creaked open, releasing a faint musty scent of old paper and forgotten memories. Inside were photographs, yellowed and curled, and several folded letters tied with twine. Ethan picked up a photo. A man standing in front of the cabin, face blurred, the figure unmistakably lacking features. A chill ran down his spine. He unfolded one of the letters, the ink faded but still legible. "To whoever finds this, beware the faceless man. He comes not to harm, but to warn. The woods hold stories older than time. Stay inside when night falls. Trust no shadow." Ethan looked up, feeling the weight of the cabin around him. The fire flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward the corners. Outside, the rain continued to fall softly. He closed the chest gently, his mind full of questions. What was the faceless man warning him about? And what secrets did the forest still keep hidden? Ethan sat quietly by the window, the old letters resting gently on the table before him. The rain had softened to a gentle drizzle, and the night seemed to breathe with a slow, steady rhythm. Outside, the trees swayed softly in the wind, their branches whispering secrets to one another. The sound was like a low murmur, soothing yet eerie, as if the forest itself was alive and watching. Ethan wrapped his hands around a warm mug of tea, drawing comfort from the heat. His eyes flicked toward the edge of the clearing where the faceless man had appeared earlier. For a long moment, the clearing was empty. Then, a shadow moved slowly between the trees. The faceless man. He stood just beyond the porch light's reach, still and silent as ever, the blank skin where his face should have catching the faint moonlight like a polished stone. Ethan felt no urge to run now. Instead, a quiet curiosity settled over him, mingled with a deep, unspoken sadness. He whispered, "Why do you watch me?" The faceless man made no answer. Only the wind responded, carrying a faint sigh that seemed almost like a breath. Ethan closed his eyes and listened. The whispers of the trees. The quiet sigh of the wind. And somewhere deep inside the forest, a story waiting to be told. Ethan finally settled into the worn armchair by the fire, the soft glow casting a warm circle of light around him. Despite the eerie presence lingering outside, exhaustion tugged at his limbs, and sleep began to beckon gently. He closed his eyes, the crackle of the fire mingling with the whispering wind outside. Slowly, his breathing evened, his mind drifting toward rest. But in the quiet of his dreams, the faceless man appeared once more. This time, not standing at the edge of the clearing, but closer, inside the cabin itself. Ethan felt no fear, only a strange calm as the man reached out a hand, smooth and pale. Without words, the faceless man gestured toward the window, where the forest seemed alive with shimmering light. Ethan followed the gaze, and the trees appeared to glow softly, revealing shapes and figures hidden in the shadows, ghostly echoes of lives long past. He awoke suddenly, the fire's glow dim and the room still. Was it a dream? Or something more? The night stretched on, full of quiet mystery. And Ethan knew the forest had many stories yet to tell. The first pale light of dawn filtered softly through the cabin's window. Ethan awoke slowly, the dream lingering like a delicate mist in his mind. The fire had died down to glowing embers, and the cabin felt peaceful, almost as if the night's shadows had retreated with the dark. He stood and stretched, moving quietly so as not to disturb the stillness. Outside, the forest was bathed in soft morning light, the dew sparkling on pine needles like tiny diamonds. Ethan stepped onto the porch, breathing in the crisp air. The faceless man was nowhere to be seen. For the first time since arriving, the woods seemed simply quiet, natural, welcoming. Yet, the feeling that something unseen watched him remained, subtle but undeniable. He thought of the journal, the letters, and the warning, "Stay inside when night falls." The morning offered comfort, but also a gentle reminder that the night would return, bringing with it the faceless man and the forest's silent stories. Ethan took a deep breath and smiled faintly, grateful for this calm moment before the day fully began. He decided to explore the woods in daylight, to seek answers in the light instead of shadows. The forest was alive with birdsong and soft rustling, a world away from the dark mystery of night. And so, with steady steps, Ethan began his walk into the woods, hopeful, curious, and ready to listen. Ethan's boots crunched softly on the forest floor as he stepped deeper into the woods. The morning light filtered through the canopy, casting dappled patterns on the mossy ground. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. Birds sang overhead, their melodies weaving through the branches, and a gentle breeze stirred the leaves. The forest felt alive in a way it hadn't during the night, welcoming and full of quiet energy. As he walked, Ethan noticed small signs of life. A squirrel darting up a tree, a cluster of wildflowers blooming near a moss-covered log. The woods seemed to hold 1,000 secrets, whispered in the rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of a stream. He followed a narrow path that wound between ancient trees, their trunks thick and gnarled with age. The peacefulness settled into his bones, easing the tension that had gripped him all night. After some time, Ethan came to a small clearing. At its center stood a stone marker, weathered and covered in lichen. Curious, he approached and traced the rough surface with his fingers. Carved faintly into the stone were symbols he didn't recognize, shapes that seemed both familiar and mysterious. Suddenly, a soft sound caught his attention, a whisper, barely audible, carried on the breeze. Ethan turned, but the clearing was empty. For a moment, he thought he saw movement at the edge of the trees, a shadow slipping between the trunks. His heart quickened, but he told himself to stay calm. "Just the forest," he whispered. He took a deep breath and continued on, feeling the woods around him pulse with stories waiting to be discovered. The forest seemed to breathe around Ethan as he walked deeper into the ancient woods. The canopy above filtered the sunlight into soft, golden beams, casting shifting patterns on the forest floor. Each step brought a fresh scent of pine resin and damp earth, mingling with the faint aroma of wildflowers. As he moved cautiously along the narrow path, Ethan felt a subtle shift in the air, a quiet presence, just beyond his sight. The trees seemed to lean in closer, their leaves rustling softly as if sharing secrets among themselves. He paused near a cluster of ferns, listening. The gentle murmur of the forest was interrupted by a faint, almost melodic whisper. The sound was so delicate, it could have been mistaken for the wind threading through the branches. Ethan's eyes scanned the shadows, and for a brief moment, he glimpsed a figure standing just beyond the edge of the clearing, tall, still, and unmistakably the faceless man. The man's smooth, featureless face was turned toward him, as if observing without judgment or malice. There was no fear in Ethan's chest this time, only a quiet curiosity and a strange sense of peace. Slowly, Ethan stepped forward, his voice soft and steady. "What do you want me to see?" The faceless man remained silent, then raised a hand and pointed deeper into the forest. Ethan followed the gesture, moving carefully through the underbrush toward a shadowed grove where the light dimmed and the air grew cool. The forest around him seemed to hum with life, ancient stories whispered by the trees, waiting to be heard. Ethan knew he was standing at the threshold of something timeless. And the faceless man was his silent guide. Ethan stepped cautiously into the shadowed grove, the soft earth beneath his boots muffling his footsteps. The trees here grew closer together, their thick branches weaving a canopy that dimmed the sunlight to a gentle twilight. The air felt cooler, carrying a faint scent of damp moss and old leaves. As he moved deeper, the whispers of the forest seemed to grow clearer, like a distant song carried on the breeze. Ethan's eyes searched the gloom, trying to catch sight of the faceless man, but the figure had disappeared into the shadows. A sense of calm settled over him. The forest was no longer threatening but inviting, as if it held stories that wanted to be shared, secrets waiting patiently to be told. He knelt beside a cluster of stones arranged in a circle, worn smooth by time and weather. In the center lay a small, carved wooden box, its surface etched with intricate patterns resembling those from the old journal he had found. With gentle hands, Ethan opened the box. Inside were several small objects, a feather, a smooth river stone, and a delicate silver pendant shaped like a leaf. He lifted the pendant and felt a warmth spread through his fingers, as if the forest itself had reached out to him. Suddenly, the air shifted, and a soft sigh seemed to ripple through the trees. Ethan looked up to see the faceless man standing just beyond the grove, watching quietly. Though the man's face remained blank, Ethan felt a profound connection, a silent understanding that this place, these woods, were alive with memories and meaning. The faceless man raised his hand once more, this time in a slow, deliberate wave. Ethan nodded softly, a sense of peace washing over him. The forest had welcomed him. And the night's mysteries were beginning to unfold. As the sun began its slow descent, the soft glow of evening light filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Ethan made his way back toward the cabin, each step measured and thoughtful. The weight of the day's discoveries rested lightly on his shoulders, softened by the gentle peace that now filled the woods around him. The faceless man's presence no longer felt menacing but strangely comforting, like an ancient guardian watching over this timeless place. Ethan realized that the stories whispered by the trees were not warnings but invitations, to listen, to remember, to belong. Back at the cabin, Ethan stoked the fire, the warm glow casting flickering light on the wooden walls. He settled into his chair, the familiar creak soothing as he wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. Outside, the forest was quiet again, save for the soft rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. Ethan's eyes drifted toward the window, where shadows danced gently in the fading light. For a moment, he thought he saw the faceless man standing beyond the clearing, watching with that impossible blank face. But when he blinked, the figure was gone. Ethan smiled softly to himself. The forest held its secrets, and so did the faceless man. But tonight, he felt safe. He closed his eyes, the crackle of the fire and the whispering wind lulling him toward sleep. And as the stars began to twinkle overhead, the woods seemed to hum a quiet lullaby, ancient, mysterious, and full of gentle light. The soft light of dawn crept gently through the cabin window, painting the wooden floor with pale gold. Ethan stirred awake, feeling the peaceful hush of morning settle around him like a gentle blanket. The night's shadows had faded, leaving behind a quiet stillness that wrapped the cabin in calm. He rose slowly, stretching as the warmth from the dying embers of last night's fire lingered faintly in the room. Outside, the forest was alive with the gentle sounds of morning, birdsong weaving through the trees, the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush, and the distant murmur of a flowing stream. Ethan stepped onto the porch, breathing deeply the crisp, fresh air. The world felt new, as if the forest had been waiting for this moment to begin again. For a while, he simply stood there, listening to the quiet symphony of dawn. The faceless man was nowhere in sight. The woods were serene, welcoming. Ethan smiled softly, a quiet gratitude filling his heart. Whatever mysteries the forest held, he felt ready to meet them, one calm step at a time. As the sun rose higher, casting long beams of light through the trees, Ethan began to plan his day, feeling a renewed sense of peace and belonging in the heart of the woods. Ethan decided to follow a narrow, overgrown trail he'd noticed the day before, a path that seemed to weave deeper into the heart of the forest. The morning light filtered softly through the branches, casting dappled shadows that danced with every gentle breeze. As he walked, the scent of pine and earth grew stronger, mingling with a faint sweetness from wildflowers tucked between the trees. The path was quiet but alive with subtle sounds, the rustle of leaves, the soft hum of insects, and the occasional distant call of a bird. The trail wound gently uphill, curving around moss-covered rocks and winding past ancient trees whose bark was etched with time. Ethan's footsteps were light, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of the forest floor. At one point, the path opened into a small clearing, where sunlight spilled generously, warming the earth. In the center stood a solitary bench, rough-hewn from a fallen tree trunk, inviting and worn smooth by countless visitors. Ethan sat down, taking a moment to breathe deeply, letting the calm of the place seep into his bones. He felt a quiet presence, not the faceless man this time, but something gentler, like the spirit of the woods itself watching over him. After a few minutes, he rose and continued along the path, curiosity and peace growing with each step. The forest was a world of stories, of shadows and light, and Ethan felt he was learning to listen. The path led Ethan to a gentle stream, its clear water winding softly through the forest like a silver ribbon. Sunlight sparkled on the surface, creating flickers of light that danced across the mossy banks. He knelt by the water's edge, dipping his fingers into the cool current. The stream murmured softly, its soothing song blending with the rustling leaves and distant bird calls. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, letting the peaceful sounds wash over him. The worries and fears that had gripped him during the night felt distant now, replaced by a gentle calm. Nearby, a deer stepped quietly through the underbrush, pausing to drink from the stream. Its presence was a quiet reminder of the life that thrived here, delicate, serene, and interconnected. As Ethan stood and continued along the stream's edge, he noticed small carvings on a fallen log, symbols similar to those he had seen on the stone marker and in the old journal. They seemed to tell a story, though its meaning was still just beyond his grasp. The forest felt alive with history and mystery, a living tapestry woven from countless moments like this one, quiet, beautiful, and full of secrets. Ethan smiled softly, feeling a deep connection to this place growing within him. The faceless man's presence was still a part of the night's memory, but now, in the light of day, the woods offered something else, hope. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a soft golden light through the trees as Ethan made his way back toward the cabin. His footsteps were slow and deliberate, savoring the last warmth of the day and the quiet peace the forest had shared with him. The trail beneath his boots was softened by layers of pine needles, cushioning each step. Birds fluttered between branches, their songs light and carefree. As he approached the clearing, the cabin came into view, a sturdy silhouette against the deepening hues of twilight. The stone chimney stood proud, and the wooden porch seemed to beckon him home. Ethan paused for a moment on the porch, breathing in the cool, fragrant air. The memories of the faceless man lingered, but they felt less ominous now, more like a gentle reminder that the forest held stories beyond human understanding. He opened the door and stepped inside, the familiar scent of pine and smoke greeting him warmly. The small fire still burned softly in the stove, casting flickering shadows across the walls. Ethan settled into his chair, feeling the comforting weight of the cabin around him. Outside, the first stars began to twinkle through the branches. He smiled to himself, a quiet gratitude filling his heart. Whatever the forest held, he knew he was a part of its story now. The evening deepened, wrapping the cabin in a velvet cloak of quiet. Outside, the forest settled into a soft stillness, the trees silhouetted against a sky dotted with countless stars. Ethan sat by the fire, the gentle crackling of the flames the only sound within the cabin's walls. He wrapped a warm blanket around his shoulders, feeling the comforting weight as he gazed into the glowing embers. The memories of the day, walking through the woods, discovering ancient symbols, and the silent presence of the faceless men, mingled with a deep sense of peace. Tonight, the forest no longer felt like a place of fear, but of connection. Of stories whispered across time. Ethan's eyes grew heavy. He let himself drift, the firelight flickering softly as his breath slowed. Outside, a faint breeze stirred the pine needles, carrying with it the softest sigh, almost like a lullaby. The faceless man watched silently from the shadows, a quiet guardian of the woods. And in the calm embrace of night, Ethan found a gentle rest, one filled with the promise of new stories to come. The first light of dawn crept softly through the curtains, bathing the cabin in a gentle glow. Ethan stirred slowly, the restful sleep wrapping around him like a soft blanket. The night's quiet had settled deep within him, soothing and steady. He rose quietly and moved to the window, pushing back the curtain just enough to peer out. The forest was calm, bathed in the pale light of morning. Dew sparkled on leaves and grass, each drop catching the sunlight like a tiny gem. For a moment, Ethan thought he saw a figure standing at the edge of the clearing, tall and still. But when he blinked, the shape had vanished, leaving only the gentle sway of the trees. Ethan smiled softly, feeling the peaceful connection he had come to find here. The faceless man was a part of the woods, a guardian of secrets and stories, watching over the land in silent vigilance. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the crisp morning air, and stepped outside, ready to greet the day and whatever new mysteries it might bring. The forest was alive, and Ethan was a part of its quiet song. As the day faded into evening, Ethan returned to the cabin after a quiet walk through the woods. The golden light softened around the trees, casting long shadows that stretched across the forest floor. Inside the cabin, the fire flickered gently, warming the small room. Ethan settled into his chair with a soft sigh, the weight of the day lifting from his shoulders. Just as he began to relax, a gentle knock came at the door. Ethan's heart skipped, but he moved calmly to answer. Opening the door, he found no one there, only a small bundle wrapped in cloth resting on the porch step. He picked it up carefully and unwrapped it, revealing a collection of wildflowers, freshly picked and delicate. There was no note, only the quiet presence of the gift. Ethan felt a warmth bloom inside him, a silent message carried through the forest. The faceless man was near, watching, offering quiet comfort in his own mysterious way. Ethan smiled softly and placed the flowers in a jar on the windowsill, their colors bright against the growing dusk. Outside, the forest whispered softly, and the night settled gently around the cabin. Night had fully fallen, and the forest around the cabin was draped in darkness. Ethan sat by the window, the soft glow of the fire casting warm light across the room. Outside, the trees swayed gently in the cool night breeze. His eyes rested on the clearing where the faceless man often appeared. Tonight, the figure was there again, standing quietly beneath the silver moonlight. The smooth, featureless face caught the glow, reflecting it softly like a calm, blank canvas. Ethan felt no fear, only a deep sense of understanding. The faceless man was not a threat, but a guardian, silently watching over the woods and those who entered them. A soft sigh seemed to rise from the trees, wrapping around the cabin like a protective embrace. Ethan whispered, "Thank you," and the faceless man's presence seemed to respond with a quiet stillness. The night was calm, filled with gentle whispers and peaceful shadows. And in that quiet moment, Ethan knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. The soft light of early morning crept through the cabin window, painting the room in gentle shades of gold and rose. Ethan woke slowly, the peace of the night still lingering in his heart. He packed his bag quietly, moving with calm deliberation. The forest outside was still, the morning mist weaving softly through the trees. Before leaving, Ethan stepped onto the porch one last time. The clearing was empty, bathed in soft dawn light. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of movement, a shadow slipping between the trees. He smiled softly. The faceless man was watching, a silent guardian of the woods. Ethan took a deep breath of the fresh morning air, feeling the quiet strength of the forest fill him. With one last look at the cabin, he turned and began his walk down the path, the soft crunch of pine needles beneath his feet marking his gentle farewell. The forest held its stories close, but Ethan knew he would carry them with him always. And as the morning sun climbed higher, the woods settled once more into their timeless, peaceful rhythm. Ethan's footsteps faded softly along the winding path as he walked away from the cabin, the morning light filtering warmly through the trees. The forest around him seemed to breathe a gentle farewell, leaves whispering in the breeze like quiet voices saying goodbye. He paused for a moment beneath a tall pine, turning back to glance once more at the hidden cabin nestled among the trees. Though small and unassuming, it held a world of memories. A place where fears had softened, and mysteries had become companions. The faceless man's presence was no longer a shadow of dread but a silent, steady guide woven into the fabric of the woods. Ethan smiled, feeling a calm strength fill his chest. He knew that no matter where life took him, the forest stories would travel with him, gentle reminders of connection, courage, and quiet wonder. With one last deep breath, forest air, Ethan turned away, stepping forward into the new day, carrying the wood's peaceful secrets in his heart. As Ethan walked farther from the cabin, the sounds of the forest began to fade softly behind him. The path stretched gently through the trees, bathed in the golden light of morning. He paused to rest beneath a wide oak, the cool shade offering a moment of quiet reflection. The memories of the past days drifted through his mind like leaves on a gentle stream, each one a story, a feeling, a fragment of the mysterious woods. The faceless man's silent presence lingered in his thoughts, not a figure of fear, but a symbol of the forest's ancient watchfulness. A reminder that some things are beyond understanding, yet still part of the world's quiet balance. Ethan felt a deep gratitude for the journey, both the outer walk through the woods and the inner journey toward calm and acceptance. The forest's whispers had taught him patience, courage, and the beauty of listening. And as he rose to continue down the path, Ethan carried with him a newfound peace, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The path slowly opened to a sunlit clearing, where wildflowers swayed gently in the soft breeze. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face and the fresh air fill his lungs. This moment felt like a new beginning, a quiet turning point after the days spent surrounded by the mysteries of the forest. He paused and looked back toward the trees, the shadows where the faceless man had walked. Though the figure was no longer visible, its silent presence felt woven into the very fabric of the woods. Ethan smiled softly, a calm certainty settling in his heart. The forest had shared its stories, and in return, it had given him a sense of peace and belonging. With steady steps and an open heart, Ethan stepped forward into the bright clearing, ready to embrace the journey ahead. The woods whispered gently behind him. A soft farewell and a promise of stories yet to come. Ethan paused at the edge of the clearing, the warmth of the sun comforting against his skin. He looked back once more, his gaze tracing the line where the forest began, tall trees standing like silent sentinels guarding ancient secrets. For a fleeting moment, he thought he saw the faceless man standing just beyond the shadows, watching him with that smooth, blank face. The figure was still and silent, blending seamlessly with the trees. Ethan felt no fear. Instead, a quiet understanding blossomed within him, a deep respect for the mysterious guardian of the woods. He gave a small nod, a silent thank you to the faceless man and the forest that had welcomed him. With a final breath of the cool forest air, Ethan turned away, stepping confidently toward the path that led back to the world beyond. The woods held their secrets close, but they had gifted him something precious. A calm heart and the knowledge that some mysteries are meant to be felt rather than solved. As the trees faded behind him, Ethan carried the gentle stories of the forest with him, a quiet light to guide his way. The path before Ethan stretched wide and open, bathed in the soft glow of late morning sun. The forest had faded behind him, but its presence remained, woven quietly into his thoughts and spirit. Each step forward felt lighter, filled with newfound strength and calm. The faceless man's silent watch had become a symbol, not of fear, but of protection, a reminder that even in the unknown, there is guidance. Ethan breathed deeply, the crisp air filling his lungs as he moved toward the horizon. The world beyond the woods awaited, full of new stories and gentle challenges. He felt ready. Ready to face whatever lay ahead with quiet courage and an open heart. The woods had taught him to listen, to feel, and to trust the rhythms of life, lessons he would carry forever. As the sun climbed higher, Ethan walked on, a calm smile on his face and the gentle stories of the forest echoing softly within. Ethan's steps slowed as he reached the crest of a gentle hill, the view stretching out before him like a vast, open canvas. Rolling fields and distant mountains stretched beneath a sky painted with soft clouds, the world full of possibility. He stood there for a moment, the quiet breeze carrying the scent of pine and earth, mingling with the faint memory of the faceless men, a presence that had guided him through the woods and beyond fear. Ethan closed his eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face and the steady beat of his heart. The unknown no longer felt daunting. Instead, it was a promise, a path waiting to be walked with calm courage. With a gentle smile, Ethan turned toward the horizon, ready to embrace whatever came next. The forest's quiet stories had woven themselves into his soul, a lasting light to carry him forward. And as the day stretched out before him, full of soft whispers and new beginnings, Ethan stepped confidently into the future, calm, steady, and at peace. As evening settled gently over the land, Ethan found himself once more at the edge of the forest. The trees stood tall and silent, their branches swaying softly in the cool breeze. The sky above was painted in hues of deep purple and soft amber, stars beginning to twinkle faintly. He lit a small campfire near the clearing, its warm glow casting dancing shadows around him. The crackling flames whispered stories of ancient days, of secrets held tightly by the woods. Ethan wrapped himself in a blanket, the cool night air a gentle reminder of the world beyond. His thoughts drifted to the faceless men, that silent guardian who had watched over him with a blank face that somehow felt full of meaning. He whispered softly into the night, "Thank you for watching over me." For a long moment, the forest seemed to breathe, the shadows shifting as if in response. And though the faceless men remained unseen, Ethan felt a quiet presence nearby, a silent companion in the darkness. As the fire's embers glowed softly, Ethan closed his eyes, letting the peaceful night lull him into gentle rest. The forest held its mysteries, and now, so did he. The soft glow of dawn crept slowly over the horizon, spilling pale light through the trees and onto the forest floor. Ethan awoke to the gentle rustling of leaves and the sweet songs of morning birds, a serene symphony that filled the quiet air. He stretched and rose from his resting place near the dying embers of the campfire. The night's calm lingered in the cool morning breeze, carrying with it the last whispers of the forest's ancient stories. Ethan took a deep breath and looked toward the woods, tall, strong, and endless. The faceless man was nowhere to be seen, but his silent presence felt woven into every branch and stone, an invisible thread connecting past and present. With a soft smile, Ethan gathered his belongings and took one last slow walk through the clearing. The light filtered softly through the leaves, creating patterns of gold and green on the ground. He felt a quiet gratitude for the journey, for the mysteries encountered and the peace found. The forest had become a part of him, its stories etched gently into his heart. And as he stepped forward into the new day, Ethan carried the forest's calm with him, a lasting gift to guide his way. Ethan followed the winding path that led away from the forest's edge, the soft crunch of pine needles beneath his boots marking each gentle step. The world beyond the woods stretched wide and welcoming, bathed in the soft light of morning. As he walked, memories of the forest lingered. The quiet whispers of leaves, the silent presence of the faceless men, and the stories held deep within the ancient trees. Though he was leaving the woods behind, Ethan carried a deep sense of calm and belonging with him. The forest's mysteries were no longer distant shadows but a warm light inside his heart. Birdsong filled the air around him, a gentle reminder that life continues in cycles of quiet moments and bright beginnings. Ethan smiled softly, feeling ready to embrace whatever awaited beyond the path, knowing that the forest's peace would always be with him. With steady steps and a calm spirit, he walked on toward home, toward the next chapter of his journey. Ethan stepped out of the shadow of the forest and onto a quiet country road bathed in soft sunlight. The gentle hum of distant life greeted him, a bird's call, the rustle of grass in the breeze, and the faint sounds of a waking town. Though the woods were behind him, their peaceful presence lingered like a gentle embrace around his heart. He breathed deeply, feeling the warm air fill his lungs and the steady beat of his own steps grounding him in the present. Home was near, but Ethan knew that the forest stories would travel with him always, whispered in the quiet moments, felt in the calm of his breath, and held close like a cherished secret. With a soft smile and a heart full of gratitude, Ethan continued down the road, ready to greet the world anew. The faceless man was no longer a mystery to fear, but a silent friend who had guided him through the woods' quiet magic. And with each step, Ethan felt the gentle peace of the forest walking beside him. As Ethan walked the winding road, the trees thinned and the fields stretched wide beneath a soft blue sky. The gentle sounds of everyday life, a distant lawn mower, the chatter of birds, blended with the quiet memories of the forest. He paused beside a wooden fence, resting his hands on the weathered rails. The cool touch grounded him, and for a moment, he closed his eyes, letting the peaceful thoughts flow through him. The faceless man's silent watch had become a symbol of calm strength, a reminder that even in the unknown, there is beauty and protection. Ethan smiled softly to himself, grateful for the journey he had taken and the quiet wisdom he had found. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, carrying the gentle stories of the woods in his heart and the calm light of a new day guiding his way. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky with soft hues of pink and lavender. Ethan found a quiet spot on a small hill overlooking the countryside, where the gentle breeze whispered through the tall grasses. He sat down, feeling the earth steady beneath him, and watched as the day slipped peacefully into evening. The world was calm, filled with the soft sounds of nature winding down. Crickets beginning their gentle song, the rustling of leaves in the fading light. Ethan's thoughts drifted to the forest and the faceless man who had silently guided him. Though the figure had no face, Ethan now understood the quiet power in its presence, a guardian of stories, a keeper of calm in the unknown. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply, letting the peaceful evening wrap around him like a warm blanket. And as the stars began to twinkle faintly overhead, Ethan felt a deep, gentle peace settle within his soul. The night sky stretched wide and clear above Ethan, a tapestry of twinkling stars sparkling gently in the cool air. He lay back on the soft grass, the earth firm and comforting beneath him, and looked upward into the vast, silent expanse. Each star seemed to pulse with quiet light, like distant stories told in whispers across time and space. The peaceful silence wrapped around Ethan, soothing every part of him. He thought again of the faceless man, the silent guardian of the woods, whose presence had shifted from eerie to comforting. It was as if the man belonged not just to the forest, but to the night sky itself, an eternal watcher, steady and calm. A gentle breeze stirred, carrying the soft scent of pine and earth, and Ethan felt the forest's quiet embrace even here, beneath the stars. With a contented sigh, he closed his eyes and let the peaceful night carry him toward restful sleep, his heart light and full of calm. Morning light spilled softly through the trees, casting gentle shadows on the forest floor. Ethan wandered slowly, savoring the quiet stillness and the warm glow of dawn. The forest seemed to breathe around him, every leaf, every whispering breeze, every bird call blending into a symphony of calm. He paused by a small cluster of wildflowers, their delicate petals glowing with dew. Gently, he reached down and picked one, feeling the cool softness in his hand. As he held the flower, Ethan felt a deep connection to this place, a gift from the forest itself, a symbol of the peace and understanding he had found here. He smiled softly, knowing that the faceless man's silent presence had been a guide, leading him toward this quiet moment of grace. The woods were alive with stories, and Ethan carried one of their most precious, a story of calm, courage, and quiet light. Ethan stood at the edge of the forest once more, the soft morning sun warming his face. The trees behind him whispered gently in the breeze, their voices a comforting murmur of timeless stories. Though the woods stretched wide and mysterious, Ethan no longer felt alone or uncertain. The faceless man's silent watch had become a symbol of strength and calm, a reminder that some mysteries don't need solving, only acceptance. He took a deep breath, feeling the crisp air fill his lungs and steady his heart. Ahead lay the open road, full of possibilities and quiet promise. With one last glance at the forest's edge, Ethan stepped forward, carrying the peace and stories of the woods within him. The journey was far from over, but he felt ready, calm, grounded, and at peace. The soft glow of morning stretched across the horizon, painting the sky in shades of peach and lavender. Ethan stood quietly, watching the day begin with a gentle calm that filled his entire being. The forest behind him was still and peaceful, its secrets resting beneath the soft light. The faceless man was nowhere to be seen, but Ethan felt the silent presence linger, like a quiet blessing. With a slow, deep breath, he stepped forward into the new day, carrying the forest's quiet strength within him. The path ahead was open and welcoming, filled with the promise of fresh beginnings and gentle adventures. Ethan smiled softly, his heart light and steady. And as the world awakened around him, he walked on, calm, ready, and full of quiet hope. The sun climbed steadily higher, casting warm light through the gently swaying branches. Ethan paused beside a quiet brook, the water trickling softly over smooth stones, its gentle song a soothing companion. He knelt to dip his fingers into the cool stream, watching ripples spread outward like echoes of peaceful thoughts. The forest seemed to breathe with him, its timeless rhythm syncing with the steady beat of his own heart. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, feeling the calm settle deeply into his soul. The faceless man had long since become a figure of quiet strength, a silent guide who had led him through shadowed woods and into light. With a soft smile, Ethan stood, ready to continue his journey, carrying the forest's gentle wisdom within. Ethan walked slowly along the forest's edge, the breeze weaving softly through the trees, carrying with it faint whispers, like secrets shared only with those who listen deeply. The leaves rustled gently overhead, their sound blending with the distant murmur of a creek. The world felt alive, serene, as if every breath of wind was a message from the forest itself. He paused beneath a towering pine, its bark rough beneath his fingertips, and closed his eyes to better hear the whispers of the woods. Though the faceless man was not visible, Ethan sensed his presence still lingering, a calm guardian watching silently from the shadows. The forest's voice was soft but steady, reminding Ethan that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but simply embraced. With renewed peace, Ethan continued down the path, each step light and sure, carrying the quiet wisdom of the woods within. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, the forest was bathed in the soft glow of twilight. Shadows lengthened gently, weaving between the trees like quiet threads. Ethan followed a narrow trail, the path lit by fading light and the occasional flicker of fireflies that danced among the leaves. The air was cool and fragrant, filled with the scent of pine and earth. He felt a familiar presence nearby, a steady calm that settled around him like a warm shawl. Though the faceless man remained unseen, Ethan knew the silent guardian walked alongside him, unseen but always there. The trail wound softly through the woods, leading Ethan toward a small clearing where the first stars began to twinkle in the deepening sky. He paused, breathing deeply, feeling the peaceful magic of the moment. In the quiet of the twilight forest, Ethan found a gentle reassurance, a reminder that even in darkness, there is calm and light. The forest had settled into night, the canopy above a quilt of shimmering stars. Ethan stood quietly in the clearing, the cool air wrapping around him like a soft blanket. The gentle crackle of a small fire nearby added warmth and light, casting flickering shadows on the trees. The sounds of the night, distant hoots, the rustle of leaves, and the whisper of a breeze, wove together into a soothing lullaby. Ethan's thoughts drifted to the faceless man, that mysterious figure who had guided him through the woods with silent watchfulness. Though the man's face was blank, Ethan felt a deep connection, a calm presence that had offered protection without words. He closed his eyes, breathing in the fresh night air, letting the peacefulness settle in. In the quiet embrace of night, Ethan found rest. And the forest, with all its mysteries, whispered a gentle promise of safety and calm. The night slowly gave way to the first light of dawn, a soft glow filtering through the trees and casting gentle shadows on the forest floor. Ethan stirred gently, feeling the cool air touch his skin as he stepped outside the cabin. The world around him was quiet and new, wrapped in the fresh promise of a brand new day. Birds sang softly, their melodies weaving through the morning air like a delicate song. Ethan took a deep breath, the crisp forest scent filling his lungs, and looked toward the woods with a peaceful smile. Though the faceless man was nowhere in sight, Ethan felt his silent presence lingering like a gentle guardian watching over the land. The forest had become a place of calm and refuge, and Ethan was ready to carry its quiet strength with him into whatever lay ahead. With steady steps and a calm heart, he began his walk down the familiar path, the morning light guiding his way. Ethan reached the edge of the forest once more, the familiar scent of pine and earth filling the air around him. The sunlight filtered softly through the canopy, casting a golden glow that warmed the quiet path ahead. He paused for a moment, closing his eyes and feeling the gentle breeze brush against his skin. The faceless man's silent watch had been a constant presence throughout his journey, a quiet guardian who needed no words to speak. With a soft sigh, Ethan whispered a thank you to the forest and its enigmatic protector. Though the path ahead led him away from the woods, the peace he found there would remain within him, a lasting light to carry forward. With a final glance back at the trees, Ethan stepped forward, his heart calm and steady, ready to face the next chapter with quiet courage. The road stretched gently ahead of Ethan, bordered by elds softly waving in the breeze. The sky above was a pale blue, dotted with wisps of clouds that drifted lazily. Each step he took was measured and calm, the memories of the forest tucked safely within him like a treasured secret. Though the faceless man had vanished into the shadows, his silent presence still echoed in Ethan's heart, a reminder of the unseen protectors that watch over us in life's quiet moments.